Module 11, dealing with communication, is going to be broken into actually two different videos. So make sure you see this first one, which is going to be about some of the basics of terms and process of communication. And then there's going to be a second part of this same module, which is going to be dealing with nonverbal communication and some of the clues that might trigger you to help you understand and might help other people understand what you're saying. So just remember, there are two videos and each one's going to be probably about 15 minutes or so. So watch them, and this is going to be one of the more important videos to cover because communication is the lifeblood of how you convey information and how communication and information is conveyed to you. All right, welcome to the Patron Leader Institute. I'm Gil Fried, the Crowd Management Doctor, and it's great to have you with another module. This is Module 11, Communicating Effectively. If I talk too quickly, you wouldn't understand, right? That's why it's so important to be able to communicate effectively. And we've all had disputes with other people where they said, I didn't understand what you said, things like that. Let's deal with that. One of the biggest reasons why people do not get along is a lack of communication. Furthermore, communication, misunderstandings can lead to significant problems, and this section highlights some of the keys to communicating effectively. So let's cover a couple terms. Some of the key terms covered in this module include communication. Communication is the art of transmitting an idea in a way that others can understand. Decoding is the process of receiving a message and then processing the information so it could be understood. It's not just hearing it, it's understanding it. That's decoding. Encoding is the process of taking a message and converting it into a medium, a message that could possibly be understood by others. It's not just like random acts and you hope people can understand it, it's processing it. A message cluster, that's a grouping of communication tools that help interpret a message, such as posture, gesture, tone of voice, amplification of the message, visual cues, things like that. We all take all these together to process to help understand a message. Paraphrasing, that's restating what a person is saying to help avoid confusion. It's also called mirroring. It's like, if I'm correct, you said you're concerned about your seat. That's a way of doing that. And then transmitting is the process of giving a message from one person to another or between many people. So those are some of the key terms we're going to be covering. Let's start off with the first element of this module, covering verbal communication. The goal of this is to understand the basic element of the communication channel theory and understand the rights patrons have to speak and communicate. Because we don't just tell them to shut up, listen to us, obey us. We want to get them engaged so they're going to be more involved in the process. So let's discuss the communication process. It entails the following flow chart that you'll see on the side here. Encoding, transmission, and decoding. Thinking before speaking is an example of encoding. When people cannot understand what was said, there is a problem with probably the transmission or with decoding. It might be that you communicated effectively, at least in your mind, but it wasn't transmitted or understood well. Transmission can be accomplished through live one person to another, live one person to a group, live from a group to one person, live from a group to another group. It could be over the phone. It could be over loudspeakers. It could be through TV, could be through radios or other communication devices. It could be in print. It could be on a scoreboard. It could be a video message. And that's often done at different events where you have a video message about safety. Those are all important ways to get a message transmitted from that encoding part to transmission to decoding. Transmission can be impacted by numerous interferences, such as, let's give an example, noise, distractions, other people talking, music. Interference can impact the communication process at any point during this transmission process. So what is often the most difficult component of communication? I wonder, are you listening? Yep, subtle hint. In order to listen effectively, the listener needs to want to hear. So they have to be open to the communication process and have the desire to really hear what someone is saying. Silence is not a bad thing and can give time for all parties to cool off and think before they act or speak or whatever else. Let's try an exercise. I will not speak for 20 seconds. See how uncomfortable it is for you. Okay, I lied. I didn't go for 20 seconds because I knew it would drive you crazy. People like noise and they like to fill the quiet time with speech. Sometimes silence can be a great tool. Besides understanding how speech works, you need to be aware that patrons have the right to talk in certain circumstances. For example, courts have allowed fans to heckle under free speech protection, but this does not mean patrons can swear or use language that can entice people to violence. To help deal with an anxious patron, you should consider, as an example, as part of this encoding process, asking open-ended questions, which allows someone to explain their position, not like, are you upset? That's yes or no. Open-ended is, can you explain to me why you are upset? You also can give clarifying statements, especially with threats or concerns, clarify what they actually mean. You also want to make sure the problem is isolated from the person, because sometimes they'll take it personally and it might be that it's not personal. Try to suggest solutions that use the term we, moving from I arguments to we. What can we do? You also want to encourage patrons to engage in a dialogue. You want to move away from focusing on what happened in the past and past wrongs or what caused the current controversy. You want to start focusing on solutions. What can we do going forward? Asking their name and using their name several times is what's called a conversation anchor. And so you often want to be able to explore that. So let me give you an example. So let's say you have a fan that's upset about their seat. Maybe they have an obstructed view. Maybe they have some obnoxious people sitting next to them. Whatever it is, they have an issue. And you're an usher. And they approach you. And they say, look I'm upset. Are you going to take a defensive stand and say, tough luck? Are you going to be open with your body and say, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. What's your name, please? That goes to one of the things we just talked about, right? You're trying to get that anchor for the communication. And let's say they say, my name is Karen. Let's use that. And it's not the pejorative Karen that we hear out there. Let's just use that person's name. And so Karen is concerned. So you could say, Karen, I appreciate you bringing that attention to us. And our concern is to make sure that you enjoy your time here, Karen. So can you tell me, Karen, what is going on here and how I can possibly help resolve the situation, if possible? And so that way you're bringing their name in and you're telling them that you've heard what their concern is. So let's say Karen brings up the concern that, look at the person that's sitting in front of us, they've dropped the F-bomb 7 times already in the first 5 minutes of this game, and I have my young child right next to me. Okay, that's a concern. How do you respond? Karen, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I know it's important for you to protect your child, and I want to make sure that you understand that we do have a fan code of conduct, and by that fan's actions, they're in fact violating that code of conduct. What can I do to resolve this for you, Karen? Is that I can go and talk to that fan and explain to them what our policy is. I'm not going to use your name. I'm not going to mention that you are the one that complained. That way you're going to be, avoiding any potential conflict with this individual. And we are going to try to work on resolving this. Look at this, how I'm throwing in the we's and stuff like that. Instead of saying you are doing this wrong, or that, saying that might be offensive to somebody else or put them in a negative light, we are going to do this. Then you can go and approach the individual, talk to that individual, and then get back to Karen, when you see them moving or at another time. Let's say they're going to the restroom or concession stand, and monitor the situation is one part of the communication. If they see that you have the visible presence there, that's going to reassure them. But the next time that you see Karen, or if the person who was being obnoxious is out of the picture, you can go and say, hey, Karen, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Is everything all right? That's trying to close the loop on the communication process, and that gives Karen the opportunity to say, yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's like the gold standard. But what if the actions have not improved? That is your job as an usher in this case, to be monitoring the situation, and to, at a certain point, if you don't think the person is responding in an appropriate manner and they haven't changed their action, you could tell the person, give them another warning, or you can say, look at, you're violating the fan code of conduct, and I've warned you once, now I'm going to ask you to leave the venue. And that's where you could bring in police or something else like that to help support you, or call your supervisor to get them to support you. Or you can go the other route and see what, based upon the policy of the venue, and say, Karen, you know what? This unfortunately is continuing, and I know that it makes you uncomfortable. I'm going to give you better seats. That's giving a solution. That's looking towards the future. So that's how you can look at communication in that one scenario where you can solve someone's problem, hear what they're trying to say. They've encoded the message. They've transmitted the message to you. You decoded it. And then you went on your own communication of encoding, transmitting, and decoding from their side of hearing what you have to say and responding accordingly. That is how communication works. But that is audio communication. There's also written communication, which is the next module element. So let's go now to written communication. So the goal of this part of the module under written communication is to understand that every word counts, and they have to get it right, R-I-G-H-T. That's an approach covered in just a moment. But let's just say a written investigation report is important because, why? It forms the basis of all investigations and corrective action. It might also be required by policies or insurance companies or things like that. But it's so important to have it written down, because when it's written down, people can refer back to it, and a supervisor might say, look, I've seen this now a couple times, we have to respond to it. So let's highlight 5 subjective facts about the presenter. Me. Maybe I'm handsome. Maybe I'm a good dresser. Maybe I'm tall. Maybe I'm short. Maybe I'm average weight. These are all subjective, as one idea of tall can vary. And in fact, I'm not that tall. I'm only 5'6". Let's look at now some objective facts about me. I'm wearing glasses. I have a goatee. I have 2 eyes. I have 2 ears. I have gray hair. Those are all facts. And that's critical in the written communication process. It's also important in oral communication as well, but in written communication is so critical that you don't give opinions, subjective criteria of whatever it might be. I think someone did this. I think they did that. It's not about what they think. It's what are observable facts, and making sure you document observable facts. So when we're looking at objective facts, you should try to follow the following rules to help write the most effective reports if you're tasked with doing that. Be comprehensive, be accurate, be clear, be legible if it's handwriting, be brief, stick to the facts, and do not highlight any opinions. If you follow those rules, you're going to be doing very well. And they're here on the side to help emphasize why they're so important. Now let's go to the right approach. This will also be shown in a slide to help you understand it, but the right approach, R-I-G-H-T. R stands for reflect. Think before you talk or you write. It's so important to think about it, not just everything that spews out of your mind comes out as quick as possible. I stands for investigate. Take the time to research what you are about to write. Questions to ask include who, what, where, when, why, those kind of things. Figure out those answers before you put it on paper. And it's okay to say, I don't know. Gather as much information as possible, such as witness names, weather conditions, witness contact information, all that kind of stuff. Hieroglyphics stands for H. A picture's worth 1,000 words, so take a picture if possible. Take out your phone, take a picture. Transcribe as a T. Take time to write your thoughts in a rough draft and then in a final version. That's okay. Now let's go to nonverbal communication. This is the third part of this module.